Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone the world thought was powerless suddenly rose above every insult and humiliation to reveal a truth so shocking that it left everyone speechless? If you want to hear such real and life-changing miracle stories, make sure you subscribe to this channel, Voice of Tasbih, right now, because what I am about to tell you will not only shake your soul, but also make you believe that destiny has its own mysterious ways of lifting people when they least expect it. This is a story of a woman who was mocked, insulted, and humiliated by police officers who thought she was just an ordinary passerby. But what happened next turned into a suspenseful thriller of fate, justice, and an emotional miracle that will leave you stunned. It was a rainy night when the city was drowning in chaos, lightning splitting the skies and thunder echoing like a war cry. And on that very night, a woman dressed in plain, modest clothes was walking alone along the dimly lit road near the central police station. Her shawl soaked, her eyes carrying a strange depth, and when two officers standing near their jeep noticed her, they smirked, exchanged insulting glances, and began mocking her with degrading words, assuming she was some poor, helpless woman without influence or power. They pushed her, laughed at her appearance, and even went as far as accusing her of loitering with suspicious intentions. While she stood silent, her hands trembling not with fear, but with a patience that hid a storm inside. And when they forced her to sit in a corner of the station like a criminal, she simply lowered her gaze as though waiting for something only she knew. Yet none of them had the faintest idea that within the next few hours, their world would collapse in front of her. The officers dragged her papers from her small, worn-out bag, laughing at the faded documents. But when one of them looked closer, a strange chill ran down his spine. Her ID card carried a surname that matched the newly appointed Chief Justice of the country, but he shook his head, thinking it was a coincidence, tossing it aside without care, not knowing that her silence was a test they were failing miserably. Meanwhile, outside the station, a young man drenched in rain ran desperately into the building, screaming that his sister had been kidnapped, begging the police to act quickly. But instead of helping, the same officers laughed, dismissed him as a nuisance, and told him to leave or he would be locked up too. And at that very moment, the woman raised her eyes toward the boy, a tear sliding down her cheek, whispering a prayer under her breath, as if she already knew how the pieces of fate were aligning. Hours passed, and the officers, drunk with false pride, continued mocking her until the clock struck midnight, when a convoy of black vehicles screeched outside the station. Sirens slicing through the silence and heavily armed guards rushed in, their voices booming, "Where is she? Where is Madam Justice?" And suddenly the atmosphere froze. The very air turned heavy as the so-called ordinary woman slowly rose from her seat, her wet shawl slipping off her shoulders, revealing not weakness, but a regal strength that left everyone trembling. Because she was not just any woman, she was the younger sister of the Chief Justice himself, sent undercover to test the very system that had been plagued with corruption and arrogance. The officers' faces drained of color, their knees buckling, their fake pride melting into terror as they realized the woman they had insulted, ridiculed, and treated as dirt was in fact the one who held the power to end their careers and expose their inhumanity before the nation. And yet, instead of shouting at them or seeking revenge, she simply looked at them with tearful eyes and said, "I forgive you, but I cannot forgive the way you mock the cries of the helpless who came here, seeking justice. For tonight God has shown me why the people suffer." The guards quickly arrested the officers, but she stopped them and insisted that their punishment should be public, not hidden behind walls, because the people needed to see that no one was above accountability. The next morning, headlines flashed across every channel. Police humiliated Justice's sister, exposed an undercover sting, and the entire country watched in disbelief as the once arrogant officers stood handcuffed, heads bowed in shame, while the woman they mocked delivered a speech that shook hearts, reminding everyone that justice is not a privilege of the powerful, but the right of every soul crying for help. And as she spoke, the same young man whose sister was missing stood among the crowd, tears streaming down his face. Because thanks to her intervention, the police were now forced to act, and within days his sister was found and rescued from the criminals who had abducted her. But here lies the most heart-touching twist of fate. When the girl was brought back home, she revealed that during her captivity, she had dreamt of a woman in a soaked shawl praying for her safety, whispering to her not to lose hope because help was on the way. And when she saw the news on television, she gasped and cried that the same woman in her dream was the one who had saved her in reality, proving that sometimes God sends his miracles wrapped in mystery through those whom the world mocks as ordinary. And as the story spread, people from villages to cities repeated her name with reverence, calling her the silent miracle of justice. A reminder that dignity, patience, and faith can transform an ordinary night of humiliation into an extraordinary dawn of redemption. So remember, never judge a person by their clothes, their silence, or their appearance, because hidden behind their ordinary face might be the extraordinary will of God. And if you believe in such true and heart-shaking miracle stories, don't forget to subscribe to Voice of Tasbih, because more unforgettable mysteries of life await you here. Stories that will touch your heart, shake your soul, and remind you that fate always has the last word.